Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning in here. It's O'Connor and Company, and boy, are we ready to go, because we are full of very important information that you're going to need to know to be able to engage with your friends at the office, with your liberal brother-in-law on your Facebook page, with maybe that Chardonnay sipping mom on the sideline of your kids' soccer game, because here's the bottom line, and we're going to launch right into it in a moment. We are one step closer to impeaching Joe Biden from the presidency than we were a day ago because of the events of the last 24 hours. The wall, as they say, the walls are closing in on the Biden presidency, and at this point, I'm even more skeptical that Joe Biden will serve out his entire first term. We'll get to all those details coming up in mere moments. Also at 7:05, Tom Baker, former FBI special agent, is going to join us. He's got strong opinions about the direction of his former agency. 7:35, Jenny Terre out of the Daily Caller News Foundation tells us what's the latest on the border. 8:05, John Solomon, who's been investigating the Bidens for years. And at 8:35, the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation president, Mark Mix. We've got a UPS strike coming up. The unions are broken under this presidency, and so is the country right along with it. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, am I overstating the case that I think that we're that much closer to impeachment?
No, I definitely feel that things are ramping up.
They've been ramping up, right, for several weeks now. And again, this is why I said after 2022, when everybody was in Eeyore and everyone was depressed because we only run a 4 or 5 seat majority, all we needed was the 1 seat majority. All we needed was those committees. All we needed was Jim Jordan as chairman and James Comer as chairman and Jason Smith as chairman of Ways and Means. All we needed was those investigations, that subpoena power, and boy, things would move rapidly, and that's exactly what we've seen. And now, the man who holds the gavel in this very slim majority of the House, Kevin McCarthy, he came out last night on Fox News Channel Hannity's show and was more explicit than I have ever heard him about where we are leading in these investigations. Listen to this. We'll begin with Kevin McCarthy yesterday.
That they bribed the Bidens, okay? This was given to the FBI. When Bill Barr finally found out about it, he sent it to his office in Philadelphia. They actually said that this was very credible. The FBI kept this from the IRS individuals for them ever to see it. So not only do they claim that they were bribed, we now find information that 16 out of 17 payments from Romania were provided to the Biden shell companies while he was vice president. When President Biden was running for office, he told the American public that he's never talked about business. He said his family has never received $1 from China, which we now prove is not true. We now have some of the most credible whistleblowers. These 10-year IRS agents who have come forward said that the Biden family has been treated differently, that what Weiss has told us is different than what Garland and Weiss has told the public. And you're sitting here today where now you have found millions of foreign money, just what the 1023 alleges they did to Biden's family. Now we found that it has funneled through shell companies. If you're sitting in our position today, we would know none of this if Republicans had not taken the majority. We've only followed where the information has taken us. But Hannity, this is rising to the level of impeachment inquiry, which provides Congress the strongest power to get the rest of the knowledge and information needed. Because this president has also used something we have not seen since Richard Nixon, used the weaponization of government to benefit his family and deny Congress the ability to have the oversight.
All right, so this is rising to the level of impeachment inquiry. And he's doing something that hasn't been seen since Richard Nixon, the weaponization of the government to benefit his family and to deny congressional oversight. I've been saying this now for a couple of months as this story has unfolded, and hopefully you're using this language as well when you engage with your friends who are still in denial about what we're seeing in front of us. We've got a crime, that's for certain. We've got a cover-up. and we've got obstruction of justice, the three hallmarks of a Washington, D.C. political scandal. And to hear Speaker McCarthy last night say it that explicitly and say, I've heard other chairmen say it. I've been prodding people. Have you heard in every interview that whenever we have a congressman, I tend to say, talking about impeachment here? You've got Speaker McCarthy now on worldwide television on the Fox News channel saying this has risen to the level of impeachment inquiry. Julie, something's shifted now.
Yeah, and I was maybe you can explain this a little bit better. What about a special prosecutor? Are they? Is that? I remember Joe DeGenova saying something yesterday, and I wasn't.
Yeah, I asked him yesterday about it. He
Yes.
says you're never going to really get a special prosecutor. First of all, there's no special prosecutor. It would be a special counsel. Special prosecutor
counsel.
statute is gone. Special counsel in the fashion of Robert Mueller, but you're never going to get that out of Merrick Garland's Justice Department.
Right.
Certainly not one that we can have any faith in. The other problem with the special counsel at this point is that then the clock starts over. You wait for it won't be over until after the presidential election, and this is an imminent situation.
But do you think Garland would do that to buy time?
Oh, they could try, but and then what we need the House chairman like Jordan and Comer and Smith and Speaker McCarthy to gird themselves and say we don't really give a crap what the Justice Department is doing. Justice Department has lost all credibility at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We will go forward with our inquiry regardless of what the special counsel does. Now, I don't, this will give the media another thing to hang their hat on, saying, the Congress is going through this political operation while the special counsel is trying to do a judicial investigation, and Congress should stay out of it. And so, it'll just be, it's more smoke and mirrors, though.
Yeah.
This is a crippled presidency, as we've seen, in
Yes.
more ways than one. And just to echo one of the things that has developed yesterday, here's Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday when asked, or you know what, before we get there, here's what Joe Biden has been saying since 2019, since he was trying to get the nomination from the Democrats. And remember, it was a hotly contested nomination process.
Yes.
You had Bernie Sanders, you had Elizabeth Warren, you had Pete Buttigieg, you had Kristen Gillibrand, you had all these very well-funded Kamala Harris,
Yes.
Beto O'Rourke. Remember how
Yes.
much money Beto
Yes.
had when he was going to be president?
Right.
And Joe Biden was seen as a laughingstock. No one took him seriously. And back then, the Democrats actually raised a lot of questions about Hunter Biden.
His own boss, Obama, wouldn't even make a peep about Biden until it was over. He just didn't want to. Everyone
Until
thought,
Obama
Yes.
declared it was over.
Right.
Because he was afraid Bernie was going to get
Right.
the nomination.
Right.
So he was asked by reporters, and he was challenged by his own fellow candidates about his son and about his son's overseas dealings. And here was the message that Joe Biden had consistently all the way through the campaign, and what his press secretaries have picked up and repeated all through his presidency.
How many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
By the way, I want to pause there. There's more of him saying that, but kudos to Peter Doocy for asking the question perfectly, because the question was how many times. It's like, how many times have you beaten your wife? How many times did you spank your children?
Yeah.
How many times have you gone to porn on the web?
Yeah.
How many times did you talk to your son?
It
And the
wasn't
only
did you? It was how
yeah,
many
right,
times.
exactly. Not
Smart.
did you, not what did you talk about, or
Right.
and it means Joe Biden had to answer. Well, sometimes I knew about this, and no, he had to either equivocate and actually lay out exactly what he knew, or he had to say never.
Right.
And he said never. And he said never. It was unequivocal. He said it to reporters. He said it to people at town halls. He said it on the debate stage. It's what he repeated the entire time. I never talked to my son about his business.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. And what I will do is the same thing we did in our administration. There will be an absolute wall between personal and private and the government.
Do you stand by your statement that you did not discuss any of your son's overseas business dealings
Yes, I
with
stand
him?
by that statement.
He stands by that statement. And, of course, as I said, his press secretary stood by that statement. Well, yesterday we heard a very different message from his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. Very different than I never talked to my son about his business dealings. We'll tell you what the White House is saying now. They've shifted the goalposts yet again. And we'll get to that and also other developments in the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden family corruption scandal that we will cover quite a bit this morning. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, it's 5:15.
Your favorite WMAL shows when you want them. Download the new WMAL app and listen on demand.
Spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses. Period.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their business. And of course, now from the audio of Joe Biden leaving a voicemail for Hunter Biden. We got that one off of his laptop about a year ago, where he was talking about a New York Times article involving a Chinese business dealing with the Hunter Biden family business. And so, we knew Joe knew about it there. To now this latest, the WhatsApp text message where Hunter said, "I'm sitting right next to my father and I need that $1 million wired," right?
Yeah.
And then yesterday's revelation.
And really quickly, Larry, there was corroborating evidence that Biden was in town that day. And that Hunter was,
right.
when he was talking about that, when we're talking about that WhatsApp, he
Yeah.
said, "I'm sitting here with my father." They found a contemporaneous photo of him in a bar, of Biden sitting in a bar, doing sort of selfies with some patrons. And that's like a mile from his house.
They were in town together at the house in Delaware.
So it's important to remember, they're not just like, oh, it's just a WhatsApp, because this is what the Democrats will do. They go, it's just a WhatsApp. It might not have been true, but they were there together.
Well, and now the latest revelation from Devin Archer, who is Hunter Biden's business associate, who said that there were several times when Hunter Biden would get his dad on the speakerphone when they had clients in the office. And he would identify, I'm sitting here with this person and that person and that person. It's like he was obviously engaged in that. So yesterday at the White House press briefing, because of all of those latest revelations, the question came up again. Joe Biden and you have consistently said that he never talked to his son about anything to do with his business. You just heard it's like unequivocal. Once again, here.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses.
It flies. Oh, I love the period. Whenever he puts a period at the end of it, it always makes me laugh. It flies in the face of logic. It flies in the face of the facts. Yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked, okay, are you still standing by that story? And listen to this.
Chairman James Comer today says that the Oversight Committee, has evidence that the president in the past communicated directly with foreign business associates of his son Hunter Biden many times. Curious if the White House and the president still stand behind his comment that he's never been involved and has never even spoken to his son about his business.
So I've been asked this question a million times. The answer is not going to change. The answer remains the same. The president was never in business with his son. I just don't have any.
Did you hear that?
The arrogance and the hubris.
And just the boredom.
I've asked this a million times.
I've answered this a million times. That's like me talking to my kids.
And the story is not going to change. The answer is the same. All right, so the answer is the same as it's been a million times. Here was the answer just a couple of years ago.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. And I'm sorry, what's the answer today?
So I've been asked this question a million times. The answer is not going to change. The answer remains the same. The president was never in business with his son.
I'm sorry.
Subtle.
Is that the same? Hold on.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
That's A. And now what about B?
The president was never in business with his son.
Are those the same?
No, and it's very interesting because from a legal standpoint, like if there's not a document saying, here, we've set up an LLC. Daddy is, going to take care of the paperwork, and I'm going to do this stuff out in the field, right? Or whatever, laying out the different roles. It's a legal term. When you are officially in business, that is it's a very interesting. You can tell the lawyers have been talking to these people.
Oh, of course. All right, a little bit more on the walls closing in here, and more proof that Joe Biden is starting to lose support because one highly, highly placed Democrat now suddenly says that this is really worth looking at, and we'll share that with you in a moment. It's 5:22.
Need a real investigation of what happened. I mean, these revelations about that where you have Burisma, which is this notoriously corrupt company that paid out apparently $10 million to Hunter and his dad.
Hunter and his dad, that would be Joe Biden, would be his dad. That's RFK Jr., of course, saying that there needs to be a real investigation here. That was in response to the question of whether there should be impeachment proceedings. Now, I teased you there and said that a prominent Democrat has come out against Joe Biden, or at least saying this deserves a real investigation. But I didn't even mean RFK Jr. Because he's running against Joe Biden, so it's understandable, Julie, that he wants this pursued, right?
Yeah.
But listen to this. Now, when you lose a Democrat like this, here's a Democrat who is highly placed, highly respected, and has always been a huge supporter of the Justice Department and the FBI.
There are so many legal issues in this campaign, and I want to ask you about one involving the president's son, Hunter Biden, who's going to appear in court this week to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and will enter into an agreement that could avert conviction on a gun-related charge. The deal has infuriated many congressional Republicans who are holding their own hearings. And I wonder, after this plea happens, if you would advise your party to move on.
No, I wouldn't, Margaret, and here's why. The conduct here by the U.S. Attorney in Delaware and by the Justice Department it just can't be justified. It doesn't take 5 years, Margaret. As you mentioned, I was the U.S. Attorney in the 5th largest office in the country for 7 years during the Bush administration. It does not take 5 years to investigate 2 misdemeanor tax counts and to dismiss a gun charge. And we need to know what they were investigating.
Julie, when you lose a prominent, respected Democrat like Chris Christie on something like this, you know that you're in trouble. I mean, that Joe Biden has just lost the former Democratic governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
That's right. There you go.
And that's, I'm sorry, what? I'm being told by... Oh, thank you, Jeff. Jeff is our producer today, and for Heather. Apparently, Chris Christie is a Republican. I had no idea. Who knew?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that takes a little bit of the bite out of it.
It's easy to forget.
But still, I mean, he has been across the board making an apologist for and making excuses for Christopher Wray, the FBI, and the Justice Department. And here he is saying, "Oh no, this stinks all the way wet. Forget about rotten in Denmark. There's something rotten in Piscataway." And that's saying something because it's New Jersey and it always has a smell.
There you go.
So things are shifting quickly in the wind here. We've got more, though. There were more revelations yesterday, including revelations about the art sales of our favorite little painter, Hunter Biden, because he does his drawings and then he makes millions of dollars.
That's right.
But what were the ethical guidelines behind who would buy that art and what the firewall was between any political involvement in those art purchases and the White House? Well, we'll remind you and explain how they lied to you again in a moment. It's 5:30. Good Tuesday morning. It's 5:36. Thanks for tuning in here. We are so loaded up with stories today, and much of it is about the corruption in the White House, the Biden family, and the Biden administration covering up for the Biden family. And we're going to explore many angles, including, as I just mentioned, now revelations about who's been buying Hunter Biden's art and what they get in exchange. Because God knows they're not buying it because they want that beautiful painting hanging over their sofa.
Right. That's right.
They're getting something else with the deal. We'll give you the details coming up. Also at 7:05, Tom Baker, a former FBI special agent, will join us. At 7:35, Jenny Terr, Daily Caller News Foundation, on, another reason to impeach Biden over his negligence of our border and our national security. 8:05, John Solomon will join us. And at 8:35, the president of National Right to Work, to talk about this pending UPS strike. We get into all that coming up this morning. Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Julie.
Good morning.
You and I, we talked about how years ago we would love going into downtown D.C. People, I don't know if this is revealed enough in our conversations every morning over the 4 hours that we have together, but you and I are kind of foodies. We love the restaurant scene.
Yes.
We love cooking at home.
Yeah.
People should know that we're constantly sharing photos of our own meal creations.
And we also criticize other people's.
And we tend to, and where usually men like me will scrutinize women's appearances online, or oh God, look at her in that bikini. No, instead I was like, oh my God, look at that food she
Did she use canned? Yeah, we tend to be a little.
We are a little catty. We're a little snobby about the food we prepare for our family, and also the restaurants. And like you and Darren, Meredith and I, we have great memories of going downtown into D.C. and enjoying the restaurant scene and the bar scene and the social scene. And it's way behind. We do not do that anymore.
No.
And it's not because we're old fuddy-duddies.
It might be that a little bit for me.
Maybe. Mostly it's because it's a nightmare going downtown right now because of the crime. Here's the latest. WJLA Channel 7 actually has a breakdown of this, telling the story about James Tyler just finishing his meal at the beautiful Del Frisco Double Eagle Steakhouse, right? You've been to Del Frisco's is great downtown. Beautiful restaurant.
It's also like Dan spent a lot of money, okay?
That's thing. Like, no. You're eating. This is a big night out.
Yeah,
you spend
and then
the money.
you have it ruined. But go on.
Yeah, and he goes to the valet and he gives the valet his ticket, and the valet guy says, "Yeah, sorry, your car's been stolen."
I mean, can you imagine?
It's like, what do you mean stolen? That's the whole point. That's
the whole point of valeting.
Let me explain the concept of valet parking. All right, I drive up in my car. I get out of the car. I hand you the key. You park my car and charge me $1,000.
And then I give you a huge tip.
To take care of it.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, new crime spree in Washington, D.C., where car thieves will, nobody bothers with breaking into a car and hot wiring it anymore. No. They just go to the valet parking stand, take the keys, and then all you got to do is walk through the neighborhood hitting the fob, going boop, 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 boop. There's the car. I've got the key.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Pretty easy to steal the keys from the valet parking stand
and look, if you're a regular in any large city with valets, I mean, these valet booths are unattended sometimes.
Right.
Usually there's two people, but sometimes they're both out getting cars. It's not that hard.
And it's right out on the sidewalk. And
right.
It's right. So, and you're right. And certainly when you are in the business, if you're a restaurant or a bar or a club and you're offering valet parking, and the valet parking people who are actually executing the job of valet parking, they should take extra care to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. And it's funny, that's exactly what Mayor Muriel Bowser and Acting Chief Pamela Smith of MPD said in their press conference yesterday. They had a press conference about this new plague of car thefts and how valet parking stands are being targeted. And their message was that the valet people need to do a better job.
That's right. These people, they actually have to apparently be security guards as well. This is the most revolting thing, she said.
The message from law enforcement and from the mayor is to blame the victim.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And when asked about the Mayor Bowser literally said, well, this isn't Mayberry.
And she said, and residents must take precautions when traveling about.
Yeah, listen, this ain't Mayberry. You come into D.C., you better protect yourself.
Look, the criminals, they're here, okay? They're gonna hurt you, so you better take. Yeah.
If you were an elected official or if you were in law enforcement, I've got to think. I mean, I don't know. I could be out of my head here, but maybe what you do is when you actually arrest a criminal and you prosecute them, first of all, you actually take them to trial. You don't do a sweetheart plea deal that lets them out like on cashless bail or something like that. You actually keep them in jail until their court date, and then when they're convicted, and you make sure they do get convicted because you don't have a prosecutor who is paid for by George Soros who wants to do criminal justice reform by ignoring the law. No, you actually get them convicted, and then you put them in jail and you keep them in jail.
It's weird.
And while you're at it, while you're rewriting the criminal code in D.C., you don't actually take away all the penalties and send the message to the criminals, like those criminals who are stealing cars and carjacking, that we really don't care about this. Go ahead and steal all you want. Maybe that might solve the problem.
There's a word for this. It starts with a C. I can't remember. What is it? Consequences. That's it.
There you go. That would be a great, but instead, you're the problem because you're not careful enough when you come to Washington.
Yeah. Yep. You know, they really do need to put a mom in charge. They just need to put a mom of young kids in charge who will say, hey, guys, when you misbehave, we're going to set up some consequences, and then you won't do it again. Yeah. But this city is the Wild West.
Well, it ain't Mayberry.
No, it ain't Mayberry.
I'd rather be in the Wild West, actually, because at least then I can carry a gun and protect myself. It's 5:43. It's 5:47 here, and we're chugging along. Much more on the Biden crime family and the walls closing in on the presidency. Also, in a moment, we've got Kamala Harris needing a bit of a history lesson here. But Julie Gunlock, all eyes of the sporting world right now, as you know, all eyes are on New Zealand and Australia for the single greatest athletic event of our lifetimes, the Women's World Cup. I mean, this
a lot of people are.
This is how it's being spun to me by
of
ESPN.
Of course.
Like,
and I do know.
I'm telling you right now that in American sports, there is more interest in NFL training camp than there is in the Women's World Cup. But we are being told that this is the most important thing.
Yes, of course.
In the history of mankind.
Yeah. Women's sports, particularly women's soccer, the women's basketball, we know a lot of people don't really watch that.
No. Well, because it's gotten kind of wokey.
Well, absolutely, especially in soccer with Megan Rapinoe, who made a fool of herself this week when she said she would welcome a transgender player on the U.S. women's soccer team. And this is what's so interesting. So Martina Navratilova responded on Twitter with just saying, yikes. And Martina has been a real champion of women's sports, of preserving biological women's sports. Okay. And so she just responds, yikes. But this
can I just say for a moment, I love that. Martina Navratilova, what's your opinion of Megan Rapinoe saying that she would welcome a trans athlete? Let me just say this. Yikes!
Yes, but this is
that's
the thing
all you need.
This is what's so great, though. There's a difference between these two athletes, right? Megan Rapinoe engages in a team sport. Okay,
yeah.
Martina is in an individual sport, just like swimming, just like diving, just like some of these where like cycling, where biological males are destroying women's sports. Okay, so then Megan Rapinoe, what would having a biological male on the women's soccer team do for that team? It would give them an advantage. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I love that Megan's like, oh, I'm so evolved and I'm so woke and I totally welcome basically a male coming out. Now we know this team that Megan Rapinoe headed a couple years ago, when they were practicing for another World Cup, went down to Texas and played a high school male team.
Yeah.
And the male team beat them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this isn't because these aren't talented women, whatever. This is because there's just differences between men and women, and men are stronger. Okay. So if a high school team can beat the World Cup team, the women's team, okay, of course she'd be happy to have a male male-bodied athlete on her team. So anyway, Martina, put her in her place. Thank God.
Right. Well, and you're well said. You're absolutely right. And let's just be clear here. It's something really fascinating about how this is being covered and how Megan Rapinoe is being sort of apologized for and excused here, because you make the most important point, which is soccer is a team sport.
Yes.
And tennis is an individual sport, because Martina Navratilova, by the way, who fought for years and years and years to get pay equity for the women's sport. Frankly, I still don't think necessarily that women's tennis players should get the same prize money that men's, because men still play best out of 5 sets and women play best out of 3 sets. Like no one's been able to explain that to me. If women are the same as men, why do they?
Well, it also has to do with who's watching. And the ratings
and here's the thing:
sales.
There was a time when women's tennis may actually have been more popular than men's tennis, and so absolutely give them more money if they're bringing more butts to the seats or more eyes to the television. Of course, absolutely. Listen, women's gymnastics and women's figure skating should get paid more than men, because more people want to see the women do those sports than the men do those sports. All right, set that aside for a moment, though. The question to ask Megan Rapinoe is not whether she would welcome a transgender athlete, that the one guy, the one token that makes them feel better by having. No. The question needs to be, would you be okay if every single member of the women's national soccer team representing the U.S. was a transgender woman? Because transgender women are women.
Well, Larry.
And it's the women's soccer team, and we know that if competing head-to-head purely on skills and athletics, the transgender women would actually populate that entire
but
team.
Megan Rapinoe will never have to answer that question because the media likes to set her up as this woke, deity. And so she won't ever have to actually examine what the implications of what she is saying. She's also not bright.
That brings up your C word again, consequences. Consequences.
Oh,
That's
that
a
one.
word. What'd you think I meant? It's 5:53. Coming up, Kamala Harris's skewed African-American history lesson gets absolutely undone. And it couldn't have happened to a nicer gal. We'll tell you all about it. Plus, Hunter Biden's art deals and what the purchasers really got for their money.